19 degrees. You're gonna commute, commit. Welcome back, Mavericks. So you're considering, or maybe you've already decided, to save your money, your health, and the planet by commuting to work by bicycle. Good on you. Tonight, we're gonna talk about some things you should consider when you're gonna commute by bike. In part one tonight, we're gonna talk about clothing options and things you should consider for gearing up before you commute to work. So before we get started, please consider becoming a Patreon and support the channel. Our Patreon supporters get access to exclusive content, and your donations help us keep this channel going and curate bike love worldwide. If you can't, don't worry about it. Please smash that like button and subscribe so that YouTube's algorithm will allow us to share bike love with other folks around the world like you. All right, Mavericks, so I'm in my closet, and we're going to talk about clothing options based on temperature. We're going to go from cool to cold, and I'll show you some of the options you have for commuting. First, when things start to cool off, and I'm looking at a temperature range here of 50 to 60, maybe 45 to 60. Your mileage may vary. It depends on how much you sweat, if you're a constantly cold person, that kind of thing. You might want to consider, but these are the temperature basics I'll give you. You get to a vest, it allows you to keep your core warm, but frees up your arms when it's not too cold. And a lot of them, like this nice Hincappy vest, come with a liner. So you keep yourself nice and warm. This one you could, some folks can go down in the 40s with, but I would say 50 to 60 for this set of clothing. Next, when things cool off, over your jersey, your shorts, a shell. Shells come in a couple different types. This one is both wind and rainproof, and has zippers if you wanted to take off the sleeves and just keep your core dry and okay, or out of the wind. There are also very basic shells that just block wind. Now you can see how thin this material is, and you can bunch it up. And when I bunch it up like this, I can put it in my jersey pocket in the back if I want to carry it because it cools or it warms up and I don't need to wear it anymore, or vice versa in case I get cold. I've got it. However, be prepared. This will not block rain at all. So I've worn this in the rain before, and what happens essentially is it sticks to you and you feel like you're wearing a plastic bag in a pond. So not terribly good for that. But we'll keep the wind out of you and help keep you in the cooler temperatures. Again, 50 to 60 degrees. Now, one other thing you want to consider when you start getting down under 60, under 50 especially, fingered gloves. I have several sets here I'll show you, and again, they go by temperature, same temperature range. You get your fingers. The only thing you want to think about is that some of them, if you're using your phone to track your progress, your numbers, metrics, whatever, some of them you can't use. You have to pull your hand out, use it, and then put your hand back in order to change that. So you can get them with special haptic finger pads in them, but they tend to be more expensive. But in basic sense, this will keep the fingers protected because, again, when you're in the wind is moving over you faster than if you're running or walking. So your fingers, your appendages, fingers, toes get cold really quickly. Now, as the temperature starts to get cool, you can go to a longer jersey, or you can even put this over another jersey if you wanted to. It's nice and thickly woven and has long sleeves. This actually works pretty well into the low 50s without a problem, especially if you have a shell you can throw over it. Sometimes I'll wear it just as a jersey. Sometimes it'll be over another jersey or a light shirt, or even in some cases a base layer, which we'll show you in a minute. But that'll keep you, again, we're talking like 45 to 55. When things start to cool off too much for you, you can get pants that come with the pad in them, or you can get the ones without and wear a set of cycling shorts under them and these over. And they're all the way down to the ankle. They're lined, depending on how thick the temperature they're rated for. There's more lining or less. Usually it's fleece. Sometimes it's merino wool. But that'll keep you warm right down to the low to middle 40s without a problem. And again, with the gloves, now you're starting to get into the cooler temperatures in the 40s. You're going to want something maybe a little thicker or with some additional wind protection to keep your hands nice and warm while you're riding. I find between the hands and the neck, those are the things that really make me cold first, and then the top of the head, of course, because you lose 60% of your body heat regularly out of your head. And we'll talk about how you can help that with the helmet and the neck in a minute. But these gloves will keep you nice and hands are nice and protected down to 40 degrees without too much of a problem. All right, so when you get down into the 30s, especially to freezing and below, you're going to really want to consider a base layer. If you have the funds, these are not necessarily cheap. They're merino wool. They're very, very good though, in keeping your body heat in and the sweat off you. That's the key, is that the sweat is going to make you freeze a lot more quickly, especially as the wind blows through your clothing or over your clothing if you don't have a good shell. You wear it under the jersey, and between the over the jersey, you're going to wear the jacket. Now the jacket, in this case, is both lined and pretty windproof. It's even called wind stopper. It's very good. You can store your cell phone in here. You have extra pockets. It has pockets in the back, just like your jersey, so you can put your wallet, whatever, back there. Keep you nice and warm. This takes me down to 30 without a problem, and even into the upper 20s, depending on if the sun's out or whatnot. So this is quite good for that. Again, your mileage may vary. Now, for pants, when it really starts to get cold out, you're looking at the thicker neoprene offerings by like Pearl Izumi, which have, in this case, they're bibs, and they are lined with fleece and merino wool, and they are very, very warm. This will definitely take you down to 30 and under 30 without a problem. In fact, I've ridden into the teens with these with no problem at all. My legs don't tend to be the problem, of course, and they shouldn't with you either because they're constantly moving. It's the upper core and the arms that aren't moving anywhere near as much as your legs that'll get colder. But these will take you down to the teens without a problem, and will keep you nice and warm and keep the wind out. Now, they don't have a pad in them, so you're going to want to wear our standard set of bike shorts underneath them. And lastly, when these temperatures are down into the 20s and 30s, these gloves. Now you notice here it has the little, hey, you can use this with your iPhone thing for your finger. It does not work. It's hit or miss. It works pretty well, but not fantastic. These are good, again, 20s to 30s with no problem. They've got a nice fleece inner, and they keep your hands nice and warm on the bike. And when it really gets cold, these bad boys, Lobster Gloves. When it really, really gets cold, like teens and below. If you're crazy enough to ride in it, like some of us, the Lobster Gloves are worth their weight in gold. They will keep your hands much warmer. I've never doubled up on gloves, but you could certainly do that. Maybe the fingered inside and a kind of a mitten outside, or something like that. Another thing I might suggest for cool to cold weather, depends on what parts of your body get the most cold, is a neck. It's essentially a gaiter. You just slip it over, keep it right here, keeps my neck nice and warm. You zip up the coat over it, and you don't have to go to bike shops, or online to expensive places to spend a lot of money on things. If you don't have the funds, get to your local, thrift store, get some gloves that fit, double up on them, triple up on them if you have to. So you can, even in a place like Tucson in January, February, it gets chilly in the desert, very chilly. So you'll run into something that is cold but dry, and the air and the wind is just saps it out of you. A neck warmer, good set of light gloves, maybe the long pants I was talking about will keep you right no matter where you are. Now, talking about keeping your head warm and prepared, first is this. Under my helmet, so you have your classic beanie cap that you can wear, but when it gets really cold out, I just turn it around, put the helmet on over it, keeps the heat in, maintain the body temperature that doesn't make you freeze. And it also keeps this kind of the sweat contained, so the air doesn't make the sweat ice cold on your head while you're riding, because of course your helmet is designed to ventilate. So it's going to allow as much air through as possible. This helps keep the heat in and the wind out. What the heck do I have here? Well, if you're a peddler on a budget, like I have been many times in my life, then you may not be able to afford more expensive bike clothing, especially the jackets, the base layers. These things aren't cheap and they add up quickly. If you want multiple pairs because you don't want to wash them every single day, then it's going to cost some money. But what if you can't afford that? Well, for many years, I've ridden with a lot of basic clothing. And if you do it smartly, you can still get to work reasonably dry, and definitely warm. So what I'm showing you here is I've ridden in cooler weather with a nice outer shirt over my cycling jersey. Doesn't necessarily block a ton of wind. It will block a good portion of it, but it keeps heat in. And the type of material, of course, is important. And then a very, very basic pair of not even bike shorts. They're just kind of runner short or runner pants. No padding, none of that stuff, no liner. I'd wear a standard pair of bike shorts under it, these over it. And they do keep warmth in and some air, cold air out and down into to freezing, maybe a little below. This I've ridden so many times with. It's just an old Patriots shell pullover thing with a liner I got in, I think, Korea in 2000. And it is invaluable. I've ridden with this thing on my bike 100 times at least. God, more than that since 2000. And it's got a big pocket in the front so I can store my wallet or my phone or whatever. Pull it over my jersey, zip it up because it zips up all the way to the neck. And then you've got protection all the way to here while you're riding. And it blocks wind and it keeps heat in like nobody's business. Now when I get to work, I have to turn it inside out because my sweat is on the inside of this shell because it does not wick sweat. It simply keeps all the body heat in, which is both a blessing and a curse, as you might suspect. It's a blessing when you get to work and when you're riding to work because you're warm. But once you get there, you just got to make sure you're turning it inside out, or maybe do that and then wipe it off with some paper towels or something. It dries pretty quickly because it's all plastic. There's no kind of fabric in there. But the other thing, if you have a very limited budget and you can only invest in a couple of things, what you might do instead of investing in a ton of cycling clothes is invest in rain shells. So these are pants that are rain shell, and they've got no real protection in the pants. The jacket is virtually the same, a little thicker, but they'll block all the wind for sure, and they'll keep your body heat in pretty well, especially if you have other clothing under it. Now, it will not wick the sweat, of course. It acts just like the other piece of clothing I just showed you. But if you only have a very limited budget, I'd suggest buying this and the jacket first and wearing regular clothes and your cycling clothes under it rather than the more expensive bike clothes as an option. So it's just something to consider if you're a peddler on a budget. Now, something else to consider are these. These are just clear lenses. Clear lenses are important when you commute in places that have a lot of change of hours of sunlight. Like here in Virginia, in the summertime, we're talking 13 hours, 14 hours of sunlight. In the wintertime, 8, 9. So there are many times where I'm commuting at 5, 6 in the morning and it's pitch black. And you think, oh, well, I'll just go without sunglasses or go without glasses of any kind. Great, until that ice cold air hits the eyes while you're moving fast through it. And then you get nothing but tears, streaks of tears that then turn ice cold on your face, and you're constantly trying to wipe them off while you're dodging deer, cars, obstructions in the road, whatever. You put a pair of these bad boys on, keeps the wind out, you can see fine, and life is good. All right, the last thing we're going to talk about is your feet. And your riding shoes are not designed to keep your feet warm. They're designed to ventilate like your helmet. Get the heat out because typically you're riding and you're making body heat and it's warm weather for the most part. When you get down into the 30s and below, these shoes no longer protect you. These are essentially neoprene foot socks that go over the shoe. And I'll tell you from personal experience, they work amazingly well. These just zip up in the back, so you just kind of wrestle them over the shoes, zip them up, good to go. They'll keep your feet super warm all the way down into the teens without a problem. If you ride flat pedals, and you got a pair of standard, Vans like this, like I do, or standard sneakers or shoes, when it gets cold, these aren't going to offer a ton of protection. They'll get you down probably to the middle to upper 30s. When you get into the 30s and below, these are not going to keep you warm. You can switch to something a little heavier, like these Merrells. I love Merrells. They're fantastic shoes. They're cheap, in fairness. They also come in a waterproof version. Definitely recommend them if you have the funds. They're great shoes. If you don't, you're stuck with a pair of old sneakers or something like that. There are less glamorous options. I've seen people riding with plastic trash bags duct taped at the ankle to keep the rain out or the super cold. in the end, it's about getting to work warm and safely, not a fashion show. If you're more worried about fashion than you are getting to work warm and safe,
hey, you get spit that away.
You do. On the opposite end of the spectrum, and I've done this too, riding in Tucson in May or June, in warm climates, in really hot weather, it can just sap the life out of you. And places that are desert, like Oregon, like Arizona, New Mexico, the sweat goes away quickly. So you don't even know you're sweating as much as you are, because it's just burning right off and you don't even notice it. All right, Mavericks. So to recap, when you're in the 50 to 60 degree range, you're going to use this set of clothing. When you're in the 40 to 50 degree range, this set of clothing, a little thicker, a little more protection. When you get to 30 to 40, you're going to use this set of clothing, which is going to have a lot more protection against the wind and the cold. And when you get under 30, you just pile it on like the Michelin Man. And don't forget, if you can't afford the expensive cycling kit, you get yourself stuff at Goodwill or secondhand stores or cheap clothing that you can put in layers to keep warm. Layers are the key. Be a Michelin Man. It's not about a fashion show. So that's it for part one. Next week in part two, we're going to talk about tires, bag choices, bicycle choices, and more. So stay tuned. And don't forget to pick up your SCHWAG from this episode or any of our episodes at the Maverick Store.